Good afternoon, one and all, for another sunset safari. We are here in Kenya in the Mara Triangle, and you're watching Safari Live. And my name is Ralph Kirsten, and on the camera we have Jandre. How's it, Jandre? Please, everybody, don't forget to join us on the hashtag Safari Live on Twitter and on the YouTube live chat. Send us your questions and your comments and join us on the largest game drive in the world. Everybody, you are watching Safari Live, and we've just come down the hill from camp on the Olololo escarpment, and we've come across these lions that I think have decided it's a little bit hot for them down on the ground, so they, like leopards, are going to go lie up in a tree. And it looks like a couple of youngsters of the Angama Olololo pride, and they look like they are really enjoying that branch. And nice snooze in the afternoon. It's quite hot today. We had big thunderstorms last night, and it's building once again for those afternoon showers. We're talking upper 20s degrees centigrade, probably mid-70s Fahrenheit. Little bit of a breeze coming through, but it is still quite hot at this very moment in time. And if you are a lion, well, I would also be climbing up into a shepherd's tree and making the most of the breeze and getting maybe up and away from the flies as well. I wonder where the rest of them are. I'm sure they may be down below in the shade, and we'll probably go around and have a look in a little while. But we've just stopped here with a lovely setting with the wind blowing through the grass below. And two very content looking lions, and their bellies look quite fat as well, and I'm assuming they've had a good feed, maybe overnight. So everyone, I think we're going to be hanging around here. We're going to possibly reposition. A little bit later we can even have a look at these hippos just in front of us. But while we do that and find out where's the best position going to be, let's head you on over to Jamie, who I think is just out towards Chitwa Watembo.
That is exactly where I am, out towards Chitwa Tembo airstrip. So to give you an idea, we're sort of right in the corner of the Mara Triangle, and a very good afternoon to all of you. We're starting off our afternoon with an iconic scene of the elephant out in the open. It's absolutely stunning. My name is Jamie, and this afternoon Adrian is on camera with me, and welcome to our sunset safari. Remember, for our new viewers, no fly, not up my nose. Remember, for our new viewers, because this is completely 100% live, that means you can send through questions and comments on hashtag Safari Live on Twitter. Oh, hello, boy. Oh, he's coming right up to us now. The Mara, it never fails to deliver these incredible scenic situations. And it's really, I find it particularly pronounced with lone elephant bulls. And this guy's all on his own. There's not another elephant in the vicinity. And he's just created this view with the Balanites trees behind him. So our plan for this afternoon, we're going to knock about around Chitwa airstrip. The reason we're going to do that is we're going to go and look for the Marsh Breakaway Pride. So 3 very well-known females, originally from the famous Marsh Pride. They've come across the Mara River and they've set up around here, and they've also got some little cubs with them. I haven't seen them since I returned to the Mara after the holiday. So I want to go and see how big the cubs have got. So that's what we're going to go and do, weather dependent of course, because they really like the areas that get very mushy. So if, as Ralph predicts, it starts to rain, well, we'll figure out a plan from there. Isn't he lovely? Trying to get an idea of the age of this particular elephant. I actually think he's quite young. He just looks like an older elephant because of the way he's thrown mud on his forehead. You of course cannot... maybe not actually. No, I think he's contoured his face with the mud splotches. P. Hart, I am now going to steal that. Thank you very much. You will now hear it ad nauseum on my safaris. P. Hart has come up with the best best possible, I suppose, phrase one could use. P. Hart says, a day without an elephant is a day wasted. That is a philosophy that I strongly believe in. In fact, it is one of my absolute beliefs that if one can, one should always spend a little bit of time with an elephant every single day. They are great levelers in terms of their approach. Hello, mister. What's up? Are you going to come walk past us? I think you're going to come and be cheeky. Hey, my boy. So obviously talking to elephants, they don't understand a word that you're saying, but they do understand tone. And you can very quickly communicate to an animal as intelligent as an elephant exactly what you want to convey to them. Yes, I know. Hello, my boy. Yes, mister, off you go. Now what he's going to try and do is he's going to try and walk behind us. Well, there's a possibility he's going to try and walk behind us. No, he's not. He's going to be well behaved. Often elephant bulls like this, especially at this age, like to throw their weight around a little bit. And of course, it's quite a substantial weight to throw around. And they try and intimidate people, and it's all part of figuring out their place in the world, and it's quite fun for them. It's an engagement and entertainment, a break from the monotony of eating grass, which of course was a question, and I missed the name. I'm sorry, I was concentrating a little bit on it this early. I want to make sure he doesn't get behind me, and in fact, I'm going to stop him. So, Chrissy, you want to know? No, you didn't want to know. It was an observation, a comment about the size of elephants and the fact that you can't believe they get so big eating only grass. Well, imagine if they had to eat antelope. We'd have no antelope left. But you're right. I mean, essentially, you find that big animals like elephants, hippos, rhinos, all of our biggest animals are all herbivores. And that is because, of course, there is an almost never, well, unless there's a drought or something like that, an almost never-ending supply of food for them. It would be impossible for them to sustain their weight on any other kind of diet. Now, an adult bull like this will probably, he's not fully, he's not a big elephant yet. So a bull like him, I think, would probably consume somewhere in the region of 250 to 300 kilograms. So well over 500 pounds, possibly even 600 pounds of food in a day. Half of that will be excreted. He's going to wander off, framed beautifully by the incredibly striking trees of the Mara. And speaking of striking trees, let's go and see some cubs playing in one.
Thanks, Jamie. Yes, and it's really like a leopard lion or a lion leopard with these three youngsters all the way up this shepherd's tree. And we've come around now to the base of it, and I thought there was only two of them in there, but there's one squeezed in up at the top. He's camouflaged between the leaves. And the rest of the family are down below, just at the base of this wonderful tree, casting some shade down next to a pool, and they're all enjoying the shade. All 15 or 16 of them, I haven't quite confirmed the number just yet, but it's one of those, 15 or 16. Lots of youngsters in the Angama Olololo pride. And very nice of them to be lying out in the open like this for us. And so we can see all of them quite clearly, except for the one that's gone and hidden himself in the top of the tree, in amongst the leaves. He's probably getting the best position of everybody here. Now, Donna, you want to know if a lion will take a kill up into a tree like a leopard? Not particularly, no, Donna. I don't really have any recollection of lions ever having done that or heard about anybody seeing that. And the biggest reason being that they've got normally quite a few numbers to be able to protect a carcass. And it's just the mere habits of a leopard that forces him to have to do that, and also to evade lions per se. Lions are not particularly good climbers. Obviously, when they're younger, they're a little bit better, but they don't have much problem going up. It's actually when they try to get down is when they get very comical and can actually hurt themselves as well, because they're really not as adept as a leopard in climbing up there. But leopards taking their food up, they're more solitary kind of social behavior, and they're also just trying to keep their food away from lions and hyenas, whereas lions don't really need to worry about other lions if they've got a good territory. And so if there's a lot of them, like there is in this group of lions, 15, they would probably be able to chase even other lions off. And so with lions not particularly in the habits of taking any kind of prey up a tree, what they mostly do is they can drag it off into the shade, find some cover. They just try to limit the amount of other predators and vultures and things that actually spot the kill, because it obviously brings them all around, and then the lions have to work harder to keep them away. So they will find cover, but not generally up a tree. I've never seen lions doing that. I've seen them try to climb up trees to get at leopard kills, and sometimes being successful, but mostly the leopards have hidden them very well up very difficult trees to climb. Now, Aaron, are you wondering if they just rest in trees to regulate temperature like koalas? Well, yes, especially when they're young like this. I'm sure it's quite nice and breezy up there, and I'm sure it's also a little bit away from the flies. And as a youngster, you probably quite enjoy just the thrill of climbing up a tree. And maybe it's just from a nicer position there. They can see out, and it's probably quite exciting to be up a tree for a young lion. Don't often see them up there, but I have seen quite a few lions up trees here in the Masai Mara, and a couple of times in the Mara Triangle, mostly down towards the river and along the very big drainage lines and luggers. You can often see the youngsters doing exactly what they're doing here, and I'm pretty sure it's because it's cooler and there are less flies for the most part, but I think it's also quite fun climbing trees, as I'm sure they would enjoy that. It will be interesting to see how well they handle climbing down, because that's normally quite fun to watch. I've seen a number of lions falling out of trees and off of logs, and normally quite comical compared to that of the climbing skills of a leopard. So it's a beautiful scene here with this whole family. I wonder what they were able to catch last night. Was it a zebra? With such a big pride, or a lot of numbers here, and lots of cubs, lots of mouths to feed, it's not really sufficient anymore for them to just be able to catch warthogs or small prey like that. That'll probably do 2 or 3 of them for a day or two, but not a big group like this, 15 or 16 of them. They need to take a little bit more risk and go for zebra and eland and hippos and those kind of bigger prey, even buffalo. There's a big buffalo not far from here that's looking in terrible shape. His boss is all hollowed out. There's flies all over him. He's really on his last legs, and I would say that it's probably a good thing if this pride spots him, because I think he's a little bit past his time. He's almost, quite smelly as well. He's got a gammy leg, and he's got quite big sores on him. He just really looks terrible, actually. And so I'm not hoping for him to die, but I think it would probably put him out of his misery if these guys saw him. Anyway, they must have found something last night, because lots of them have got quite fat bellies. So, was it a zebra? Was it an eland? Or maybe even a giraffe? We haven't seen any carcasses around. So everyone, I might just reposition a little bit, get a little bit of a different angle on these cubs in the tree, a bit better than just a silhouette. But while I do that, let's head you on over to Jamie, and hopefully she's not getting stuck.
I'm not stuck. In fact, touch wood. It seems to be relatively manageable out here at the moment. The sunny day today has dried up a little bit of the water. It's still, still doing the odd slight sideways drive every now and again. But what's actually more frustrating is I've taken the entirely wrong road to the direction I wanted to go in. And I've got a very stubborn approach to a situation like that. I could have turned back when I realized my mistake, but I hate driving down the same road twice if I can help it. So you never know, we might find something hiding in these bushes. I know the lions are over there, which is the frustrating, or I suspect the lions are over there. But it's okay, we can take the long way, the scenic route. Not that any routes out here aren't scenic, but you get the idea. So a little bit of background on the lions that we are heading out to go and find. The Marsh Pride obviously originated, that's where I want to go, from the Musiara Marsh, which is on the other side of the Mara River. And they became a very large pride, and quite a few of the prides out here are actually made from splits or come from breakaways of the original core marsh group. So, for example, the Ridge Pride, who live on Rhino Ridge on the other side of the river, I think many of our regular viewers will be familiar with them. The Ridge Pride came from 4, if I remember correctly, also known as the Topi Plains Pride, 4 lionesses named Spring, Summer, Autumn and Winter. Hence the confusion around their name, because a whole load of people started calling them the 4 seasons. So they've established themselves there. These lionesses came over with a lioness called Lippy, who was quite a famous lioness. She was one that was quite widely sort of followed and documented. Now Lippy died recently, and 2 other, I think it was 2, yes, it was 2. They originally broke away with 3, 4, 5, 6 lions that broke away and came across the river. Lippy died, and 2 others disappeared, leaving the 3 current remaining lionesses. And no one knows what happened to those other 2 lionesses, if they dispersed. There's huge sections here where there are no roads, and of course this is a non-off-roading area. There are certain places in the Mara we can drive off-road and certain places that we can't. I would show you an animal, but I can't find one, so I'm just jabbering about the history of the lions we're looking for. There's a huge section of that river where there are no roads that run close to it into that forest. Now, they could potentially still be here. I doubt it though. The fact that they haven't been seen in 2 years probably didn't make it, although we'll never know what happened to them. But it's the nice thing about us having been here for a while now is we've started to get a real grasp on the history of the animals that we're seeing, and starting to see ties and connections between the different individuals. And of course, at one point, Scarface was and the musketeer male lions were dominant over the Marsh Pride. So he would have probably been associated with the older females of these 3. Right, well, I'm just chatting about lions. I don't actually have any lions. Let's go and find out if Ralph is still with his, and if they're looking beautiful in the afternoon.
They definitely are looking beautiful in the afternoon, and happiness really is a sleeping lion. They look so happy and comfortable in the breeze here. One of them has actually just sort of skidded his way down the trunk and climbed down to the bottom, ever so non-gracefully. But it's still making for a beautiful sight here, with 2 lions up the tree and the rest of them all sleeping in the shade of it down below. A beautiful shepherd's tree. Joy, you want to know if some of the males are starting to sprout manes? A little bit. You can just start to see on some of them with a little bit of extra hair there. You see that one, you can see he's starting to grow his sideburns, which is normally why I called him Elvis in those younger years, because they've got wonderful lamb chops, and that's normally the first sign of the mane. And then they get a little mohawk as it sprouts up the top of their head, and then it starts to fill out from the sides. That's generally how it evolves. But the first thing to appear are definitely those lovely lamb chops. But they're all looking very happy lying here in the shade. There's quite a few birdies calling in the early afternoon, or the later afternoon, should I say. A couple of the rufous-naped larks. Now, Elaine, you want to know how old I would say some of these youngsters are? Well, most of them generally over 6 months, because they are very able to follow in the hunt, and it's normally around 6 months when they start being weaned and following with the hunt as well. So these youngsters definitely over 6 months. I would say probably heading towards a year, all of them, but for the exact dates of when they're born and so on, I'm sure Jamie has got all that information, but that's what I would say. They're probably all heading around that year mark, and quite capable of following up with the pride and with the hunt as well. And the other day when we found a zebra carcass, there were lovely cubs tracks around it as well, where the adults had been feeding and so on. So these youngsters are also feeding fully on meat too. So they just need to fill out now and grow a little bit, and then they'll be fully fledged adults. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the dynamics of this group, because there's quite a few males, and I wonder where the conflict is going to happen between them and the territorial males around this area. There will be some action, and there will be some males pushed off or killed at the worst case scenario if they're not willing to back down or they don't leave the area. There has to be a winner and a loser, and there's no negotiations in between. Now, Paul, you want to know who's fathered these cubs? Would it be Scarface and his coalition? Paul, for where they are in terms of the geography, it's quite possible it could be either Scar and his coalition, but that's quite far from here. The males that I've seen closer in this area being the Chitwa Watembo boys, so I'm assuming it might be one of them, but I would have to find out from Jamie. It could well be Scarface and his coalition if they've moved through here, but as I say, closer to this area, and with the males that I see most often being the Chitwa Watembo boys. But that's not to say that it's absolutely them, but for me it would make sense. But yeah, I'll have to find out the exact father. I'm sure Jamie knows, and so does Brent, so I'll just find out from them this evening. But I would have thought it's those Chitwa Watembo boys. Anyway, we'll soon have the answer. And if any of your viewers have the answer, please feel free to get involved. Send it through on your comments or ask the questions. Anything else you'd like to know about the lions, we can always bandy it about. Okay, it seems I've just heard through the Bush Telegraph that I got it right, the Chitwa Watembo boys. It makes sense just because of the location where these Angama Olololo females are, and the Chitwa Watembo boys not being too far from here. So Scarface and his coalition, I think, a little bit further down the river road, in that kind of area. So I don't know, this might be a little bit of a bridge too far for them. But this is really turning out to be a very large pride, and It's not too long. There seems to be quite a big cub boom at the moment, and it's not going to be too long, and there will be conflict. It's going to be very interesting to see. It might be quite exciting at times. It could be quite sad at times, but that's the way nature works, and the whole dynamics of gregarious groups of animals. Yes, this is such a beautiful sighting. I think we might just change position a couple of times, but I don't think for now we're going to go anywhere. And while we maybe look for a better position, let's head you on over to Jamie, and maybe she's got some more information about these lions for us.
I do have some more info about the lions, and it stems from a conversation I actually had with the guides who've been here for a while, the Angama guides, the various guides that I've met along the way, and a conversation I had with a returning guest as well. So the Chitwa males came in, it would have been, now I've got to get my years right because we're in 2018. I think they came in at the end of 2016, if I'm not mistaken. And slow reactions. Opportunity gone, I'm afraid. Lilac-breasted roller just caught what looked like a moth right in front of us. What was I talking about? Oh. So the Angamas, or the Olololo pride, actually had cubs and fathered by other males. I don't know which males. And the Chitwa males or Chitwa boys actually came in and killed those cubs, as is natural. It's part of the whole lion dynamic. New males come in, they kill the cubs of the previous males, and they mate with the females, and they father the next generation. So it's all part and parcel of life of the lion. The males have to do that. It's instinctive. It may seem very cruel to us as humans, but it's also does help to prevent inbreeding. Getting sludgier and sludgier. I'm just pretending it's not happening. And that's these cubs would be the first ones that the Chitwa males fathered in this area. I don't know if it's the first set of cubs that they've ever fathered ever, but it would have been their first one here. Oh gosh, these ruts are deep. I do not want to catch my diff. Just hold on. So it's something that our understanding has been constantly evolving. Oh, well, I'm in this now. I can't get out of it. Our grasp of the dynamics of the lions is something that's... I don't like that feeling at all. Oh, no. No, 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 no. Okay, I'm not going to dig myself any deeper. I'm just going to get us out of this by concentrating and rocking us out. Let's head back across to Ralph, who is with his lions still.
Thank you, Jamie. And yes, we've just spun around just to get a little bit of a different angle here. But there's not too much change. All the heads are up. One or two of them still a little bit flat, but still waiting to see maybe if one of the lions that are up the tree tries to make its way down. It's always funny to watch lions climbing down trees. But otherwise, we're just seeing maybe one or two of them are going to get up, be a little bit active. There's one getting up a little bit there. Aaron, you want to know at what age do the males get ejected? It all depends on the territorial males in the area at the time, Aaron, but generally around the 2 years of age is when they sort of are getting big enough and they pretty much adults at that stage, very young adults, but that's when the territorial males of the area start to notice that they're smelling different, they're looking different, and they're potentially competition, so they get chased out by the males of the area, and off they go. They become nomadic and try to form coalitions of their own and try to challenge for a territory as well. eventually, but they're normally on the run for good parts of a year or maybe even 2, and in that time learning to hunt and live on their own and work together as a team if they do find themselves in a coalition, which is a very good time for them, because then they need to learn all the skills they need to be able to challenge for a territory of their own. This lion looking very content in the tree. Now, Spork, you want to know, so do some prides die out and get replaced? Not particularly, because the females obviously continue breeding and having babies with whichever territorial males are in the area. So it all depends. There might be conflict between the males, but generally the pride remains, and they've got their territory, and the males will then be fighting it out for who would be able to cover these females. And there's only one winner with lions. There's no sharing of the spoils whatsoever. So whoever wins then earns the right to take over with a pride like this. But it's very interesting, the dynamics and the social behavior of lions, because there's not many cats that have this gregarious nature, and so second only that of the cheetah, and they don't really stay in big groups either, 5 being a big number. So 15 lions in a pride, that's nothing unusual. And that's why it's very interesting to watch them in all their social movements and what they do with each other and how they work together, and especially around when they're hunting, and you've got the real team effort. And once they get good as a team, it can be fascinating, because they really lay ambushes and send animals into traps where other lionesses are laying, and it really can be very exciting. Seems one of the females there wasn't enough space for her in the shade. Dale, you want to know what is the largest pride recorded? Dale, I'd have to actually look up the exact number, but I would say that it's probably in the area or in the zone of about 50 of them, because there are, even now to this day, in Botswana and in areas of Zambia and even Zimbabwe, there's prides of lions over 30. So I think in historical times it's very easy for there have to been a lot more of them, and probably around 50 or so. So yes, it's very obvious that lions could have very large groups. I suppose it would mostly depend on the resources that's in the area. If there's a lot of food available, and you maybe have a nice big coalition of males where it's very stable for the prides and the cubs and everything, and they're getting good at hunting, and they're able to sustain themselves with large animals of prey like buffalo and giraffe, or even an abundance of zebra, could feed large prides. And that's even the times when they start taking on bigger prey like hippos and rhino, or even elephants as well. I know in Botswana there's quite well documented evidence of lions hunting fully grown adult bull elephants. Quite a nasty sight to watch, actually, because it's obviously very difficult for them to kill the elephant, so they start eating it alive, and eventually it will succumb to its wounds, but the lions can't really actually kill it or suffocate it like they would do with a lot of the other prey species. So, what a wonderful sight this is, everybody, and please keep getting involved with your questions and comments. This is a wonderful sighting, and we're not going to go anywhere just yet, so think about it, and we'll be right here when you come back. In the meantime, let's go over to Jamie and see how wet those roads are.
They're very wet, which means I have to take the long way round to get to the Little Governor's Road, but this is a pretty quick little slip, secret route. So there's a reason that I'm racing now, is I got sidetracked, as one does out here, and I didn't realize the time, and I've got the boss on the back. Whoop, there goes my hat. So Graham's with me. There's Graham. Graham's about to miss his flight. No, he's not. That's a slight exaggeration, but it means I have to drive past everything, including the lions that I just found. So sorry about that, everyone. It's entirely my fault. It's just a bad plan. Oh no, it's traffic jam. This is how people end up late. No, we won't. What time is it? Got plenty of time. But I'm gonna have to do a drive-by. Sorry, girl. Now, Donna, you want to know why we're not allowed to off-road in some areas of the Mara? Ooh, I'm gonna have to do this, and I don't want to. But we're gonna have to. Oh, she's got such a tiny baby. Sorry, Mom. I'm sorry. This is so rude. I hate doing this. Sorry, girl. I always give the animals the right of way, but we have to put foot. Now, Donna, you want to know why we're able to off-road in certain areas of the Mara and not others? There's a very good reason for that, and that is in order to protect the very sensitive areas in the Mara, but also the areas that are, during the high season in particular, during the migration, where there's just a huge amount of vehicle traffic and a lot of tourists coming through, which of course is wonderful. That sort of tourism brings in the money that's necessary to keep these reserves going. So it's essential, but it does mean that there's certain areas that are impacted highly, particularly next to the river and around this area, because it's right close to one of the main entrance gates. So essentially we've got places where we can off-road and places where we can't, and it's all due to being able to conserve this ecosystem and reduce the impact of people as much as is possible. So obviously it would be impossible for me to claim we've had no impact. There are roads. But by controlling very carefully where people can and can't drive, it makes sense. Oh, sorry, I'm going to now put foot flat and get us to the airstrip on time. Let's head back across to Ralph while I concentrate on driving.
Thanks, Jamie, and no problem at all. I'm sure you need to move along there, and we're sitting with such a beautiful picture here that it would be a shame for us not to just sit here a little bit longer. And every time this lion opens its eyes, it's just a perfect shot. It's beautiful. Not often you get to see lions this close, especially lying in a tree. So it's a wonderful experience. There's a ringneck dove just behind the lion, or the old Cape turtle dove. That's beautiful. She's just looking out as well. Oh, the little birds all coming in. They're probably wondering what that is. They don't often get to see lions in trees either. See that lovely white on the trunk of a shepherd's tree. That's why the Latin name being Boschia albitrunca, albi meaning white, and trunk, the white trunk of a shepherd's tree. Very often have large cavities in them, collecting a lot of water, and so the old transport riders used to often look out for these trees if they needed to get fresh water. So they could go into that cavity, which normally would have been reined in. A couple of lovebirds there in the background, looking over the lion. I can hear some little froggies calling in this little pan in front of us as well. And the bubbling casinas, a very tranquil sound that. It's like a boop, boop. That's not very well conveyed, but something like that. Sounds like a bubble popping. It's unfortunately a little bit soft, I think, and that's why I'm just trying to convey the best way, but it is like a bloop, bloop. but quite soft now. It's mostly because of the wind at the moment. You can't really hear it that well. And not a long time ago, one of the youngsters here, I don't know if he had a piece of grass or something tickling his nose, he had a big sneeze. See all the ears flicking with the flies. A little bit of panting. Those ones on the outskirts of the shade, so they're actually lying a bit more in the sun. And that's why one of the older females got up a minute ago and moved off. There's obviously not enough space for her. This is quite a big family. Imagine you've got like 10 brothers and sisters. Nice to see the pads of the lions as well. And so while we're sitting here with this beautiful sighting of lions, nicely out in the open, everybody, don't forget to send your questions and your comments to the hashtag Safari Live, because this is really a fantastic opportunity to find out what you want to know about lions or get involved in the discussion and the debate, and we'll try our best. But a couple of them quite warm now and panting quite heavily, actually. Look at the amount of flies they've got around their face. I would also be quite irritated with that. The flicking of the ears, and every now and then they shake their head from side to side. Drive me insane. Obviously always after the little bit of mucus around the eyes and the nose. Must be quite irritating. And then sometimes they do bite and they lay their eggs in the wounds, especially on the ears. And then you can see them start to be quite tattered and look quite sore, actually, because the little maggots start to eat their ears. Megan's saying that she's also got lots of flies in the final control room, so she feels exactly like these lions. Sorry for you, Megan. We're sitting in a lovely breeze. We don't have any flies, even we're sitting quite close to these lions. We're sitting quite relaxed, and all the flies seem to be sitting over there on the lions. Well, good thing, lions, you can have them. I'm not a fan. Lovely to see the different individuals as well. They've all got their own little characters too. You'll see the naughty ones and the ones that are not so naughty. They maybe stick to the rules, but all got fat, lovely bellies. That's very nice to see when a lion's got a fat belly, obviously fed very well. All of them. So that's a lot of mouths, unless they've got something very big last night, then they maybe made a couple of kills, which can quite easily happen with a nice big group. Now, Chef, you want to know how big is a lion's brain? Chef, if you make a fist, now I'm not sure how big you are or how big your fist is, but generally they say with humans, if you make a fist, and that's pretty much I think it's if you do two fists together, and not one fist. That's quite small. I was just thinking about that. I think if you put two fists together, they say that's quite a good indication of the size of your brain. And I would say that a lion is probably around the size of one fist of a human, general size. So it's not massive, but it's not tiny either. It's going the other extreme, ostrich being in sort of size of your pinky nail. So a lion's brain being pretty much the size of a fist or so, more or less. It's rather large, and their brain does grow quite extensively from the time that they're a cub till when they're an adult. So for me, that's a very good indication of their learning or learned capabilities, the size of the brain growth from being born to adult. That's once again beautiful. A yawning lion in a tree. Very nice. Carol, thank you for your comment and saying that's the kind of picture you think of when you think of the African wild. Well, absolutely, especially if it was a leopard. It's not very particular with lions, but we'll take it. It's still lovely to see a lion in a tree. Well, that one's repositioning, just getting a bit of movement, a better position for sleeping on. I thought maybe it was going to start climbing down, but obviously not. It's just getting a bit more comfortable and carry on the snooze. So maybe a little bit later they could be active, but I have my doubts with these nice big fat bellies. I don't think there's going to be too much going on this evening, except for them just lying around like they're doing now. I would say that's probably going to be them for the next couple of days, actually. And so this might be where they stay, because they've got water here, and that's all they'll need for the next couple of days, with fat bellies like that. It's quite nice to be a lion, I think. If you get a nice big meal, you don't need to eat for the next 2, 3, sometimes even 4 days. And then you just go for a little drink every now and then of water, and back you go to sleeping. So they're going to have a lovely 2 or 3 days from here. This is when you really envy lions. Our first lady, you'd like to know if mange in lions is contagious. Yes, it is, first lady, and it normally affects the individuals with a very low immune system. So if it's a time of year where there's a shortage of resources, you normally start having lions losing condition a little bit. Then parasites start to take their toll, and they can have fleas and ticks, and then they can also then go on to getting mange as well. And it can literally go through an entire pride, but it all depends on how strong they are at the time and how strong their immune system in particular is, because that will then obviously help them against the scourge that is mange. It's terrible to see lions with mange, but it's normally a very good sign of the times. And if there's drought, etc., there's always a lot bigger prevalence of mange in those times. Like now in South Africa, just before we've had very good rains in the Limpopo and the Greater Kruger National Park area, there was quite a heavy prevalence of mange. And I know just recently I saw James even with a couple of side-striped jackals that looked like they had mange for an extended period as well, and it really looked bad. They really did look uncomfortable, and their skin almost falling off of them. It was not a good sight. But once again, a very good sign of the times and the resources, and usually around drought periods you get lots more of it. But luckily for these guys, there's still quite a bit of resources around here, and they all look very healthy. None of them look like they have any inkling or signs of mange, and even the parasites are not too bad. So we're not seeing too many ticks or anything like that. There's not excessive scratching or anything like that. So, well, it doesn't look like there's any scratching at all. And that's normally the first sign. And they start scratching, and you can actually see chunks of fur coming out. And that's a very good sign that they're getting mange. But we really are starting to get a lot of rain. Now, Tom, you want to know why they all lie so close together? Well, the primary reason I would say in this particular instance is because you can pretty much see where that tree is casting the shadow. It is increasing a little bit now because the sun's starting to dip down on the horizon or towards the horizon, and the angle is becoming larger. But I'm sure in the middle of the day today, if they were here already, they all would have been bunched up and probably lying right on top of each other, squeezing in all the last little bit of shade. And they've got more now, but they still are very sociable, and they're always lying very near to each other. But in this particular case, they're also squeezed up so that they can all make the best of the shade. And, well, if you're lying on top of your mate, it can make for a nice pillow as well. As you can see, that one putting his head over the belly of the other. It's always nice to have something soft to put your chin or your head on. And there, it looks very comfortable. Sometimes lions actually sleep in very uncomfortable places. They can lie in the mud, they can sleep on rocks, and sometimes it looks terribly uncomfortable, but they just sleep on, almost snoring as they go. But so lions I've seen sleeping in some very strange places, in amongst the rocks, but it always seems like they try and search out the coolest spot. And here, a little bit up the hill, there's obviously a bit more of a breeze than there would be down in the on the plains or in the valleys. So they're nice and exposed, nice to next to a nice little pool of water. So it's actually a perfect spot, this. See, another young male getting his sideburns, his Elvis hairstyle. And his little mohawk coming through. That's going to get a little bit more bigger as time goes on. Right, everyone, maybe there'll be a little bit of action here soon, but while we sit and wait and see if that happens, let's head you on over to Taylor. No, not Taylor, excuse me, Jamie, and see how she's getting on.
Rolf really doesn't like my name, does he? It is purely because he has worked with Taylor and that was just the two of them for so long. It does make me giggle. The worst was when Brian, the cameraman, was still with Wild Earth and Byron was presenting with us. Byron and Brian, I could not keep straight, especially when Brian was on drive with Byron. See, I can't even just say it now. Byron. In endless confusion. So we have safely deposited Graham. We've left him at the airstrip to fend for himself. I assume at some point a plane will be by to pick him up. I certainly hope so, otherwise we'll be traipsing back again. I just wanted to stop and enjoy the topi up there, but there's a couple of calves that are lying down. Topi's calves spend a lot of time sleeping. You see them there, tiny patches of light. So the adult topi, of course, the tan-coloured antelope with the black patches, bizarre black patches, very odd looking antelope. And they're the little ones there, completely different colour. Much, much lighter, which is actually the standard theme, I don't know if you could call it a theme, the standard approach of most large antelope with their little ones. The little ones are almost always tan or sort of fawn coloured. Look there, it's getting its black patches though. Starting to go through. When they first were stumbling about, new and bright-eyed, they were completely sort of a light browny colour. Now starting to get their black patches, little horns sticking up. It's given us the opportunity to almost track their growth with these live safaris, because we're out here every day, twice a day. We actually get to track the growth of them in the same way we have for so long in South Africa, in the sands, with each generation or new generation of baby impala. Oh, somebody wants to suckle. Oh, that's not gentle. Poor mum. That was really quite unpleasant. Poor thing. That, I think most of you will know, or those of you who are familiar with animals, if you've grown up with animals, you'll know that that is a way of stimulating milk production. So cats need, as in need with a K, their mothers. So do little puppies. They will also need their mothers. And things like antelope, cows, sheep, goats, whatever they happen to be, they butt in order to stimulate the release of the milk. Doesn't always look very comfortable though, and sometimes, I mean, that poor female went backwards as her calf came in for one very enthusiastic drink. Sorry, girl. I think we should go and find that elephant herd again, and then we'll go back to the lions. I really wanted to see that. I broke my heart. Having just spoken about the philosophy of a day without elephants is a day wasted. Broke my heart to rush past them. It was going to be such a beautiful walk past as well. But I don't think Graham would have been very impressed if I'd made him miss his flight. We're going to trundle along, not in a rush to get anywhere anymore. I hate rushing when I'm out here. I'm going to trundle along nice and slowly, look to see what I can find you. Let's go back across to Rolf, who is still playing the patience game with the lovely Olololo Pride.
Yes, and well, everyone, we're really waiting to see what happens with this lion that's right up the top of the tree, because I think it's all fine for now while it's sleeping, but as soon as it decides that it wants to get out of this tree, I think we're going to be in for a little bit of a funny ride, because I think he's going to fall all over the place. A little bit difficult to get out of where he is, so it's going to be interesting to see the way he approaches it. I'm sure it won't be too long and he'll be thinking of climbing down. Richard, you want to know if guides could catch mange from the animals, and because we were talking about that a little bit earlier, but as far as I know, it's not contagious, or humans can't catch it, but I'd have to find out the particulars of that, because I've been in a lot of game reserves where there is heavy prevalence of mange, and there's never been any kind of warnings. When they are warning about things like rabies, which is another disease that is very prevalent in an animal such as a jackal, and when we used to go to Etosha, it was very often that there was big signs up and saying please don't feed the animals because of the prevalence of rabies at particular times. Well, they were just trying to put the point across a little bit harder with the point about rabies, but obviously you don't want to be feeding animals, or wild animals in particular, at any time. But with rabies, you do know that it is quite dangerous actually, because once you get it, and I think once it migrates to the brain, there is no cure for it. So a few days after being bitten by an animal that has got rabies, look, I really don't worry about the other one there. He climbs over him, just takes it over. Oh, this is my space, and I'm having it. Thanks very much. Not worried about the other one that was there first. But yes, so no, as far as I know, it's not. It cannot be contracted by humans, but rabies can, and it can actually kill you, because once it's gone past a certain point, there is no cure for it. So that's something to remember. So while we watch the humorous nature of these youngsters fighting over the little spaces of shade, let's head you on over to Jamie with one of my, or if not my, favorite ground bird.
I can completely understand why this magnificent bird is one of Rolf's favorites. They're pretty high up there on my list as well. The endangered ground hornbill, southern ground hornbill. Oh, what did you get? Looks like a grasshopper or something like that. Cricket, perhaps. I think I saw wings. A locust, maybe? They are striking birds. And of course, we speak of them being endangered. They're actually listed as vulnerable, as far as I can remember, unless that status has changed on the IUCN list. So that is a body that classifies animals according to how many of them remain in the wild. Now, in South Africa, they are critically endangered. The population is slightly healthier if you consider Africa as a whole, but they are still a very vulnerable bird, and a bird that faces a rapid decline if certain circumstances don't change. Of course, the biggest reason with most wildlife is the loss of habitat. They have also very specific nesters. They like certain trees and very slow to reproduce. They're just one of those fascinating. We've had some truly spectacular ground hornbill sightings. I heard a story of one with a terrapin. Noli, you say that you love their call. It's my favorite. I don't remember when it was. Was it 2 days ago? Was it yesterday? I have no idea when things happen anymore. But we were talking about our favorite aspect of certain animals. And we spoke about Impala's eyes from Lily, and the Thompson's gazelle tails, and waterbuck, and so on. And he didn't really touch so much on, well, we didn't see any ground hornbill that day. My favorite aspect of them is their call. It is a very primitive, it sounds like a distant primitive instrument. I don't quite know how to describe what I mean. But the call that they make is basically goo 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 goo, and the male starts and the female then continues the call. And they are monogamous, and they do, generally speaking, mate for life. That bonding between the two of them, it's one of my favorite sounds of the African wilderness. And I've been trying to think, there's so many, I always change my mind when I'm asked about my favorite sounds, but I can always think of at least 5 that go up there on the list. And I'm willing to say that I would say that the ground hornbill falls on that list of the top 5 sounds of Africa. That sound, lions roaring, you can't beat that sound. Hyenas whooping, the call of the pearl-spotted owl, and for me, possibly the fiery-necked nightjar as well. It makes me think of long, warm, sultry, I suppose, summer evenings in the bush. Just that storm feeling in the air. And what are your favorite sounds? I mean, those of you who've been watching regularly, what would you list as what would be your absolute favorite sound of the African wilderness, if you had to choose? #Safari Live on Twitter is how you can share that with us. I'd love to know. I'm always curious. We've asked this question before, but it's always good to repeat these sorts of questions for new viewers, and of course for those of you that perhaps have changed your mind like I do. Megs, what's your favorite? What is your favorite call, do you think, or sound? Megs is thinking. Adrian, have you got an answer that springs to mind?
Thinking too.
Yeah, everyone's thinking. Goodness gracious, and I just popped the list off the top of my head. Maybe I should think some more. There might be other sounds that I haven't included. Brilliant. Megs has come up with a brilliant answer. She says the call of the black-bellied bustard, that whistle, and then completed by the sound of a cork popping out of a bottle. I, of course, am completely useless when it comes to imitating it. Herbie's the best. Herbie does the best imitation of a black-bellied bustard call. Black-bellied bustard, by the way, for our new viewers, it is bustard, B-U-S-T-A-R-D, bustard, and it is a type of bird, also largely ground-dwelling bird. Now, these birds are roughly the size of a turkey, and they can fly as well. What, Steph? You've actually, I think you might have included one that I think might push out another. What am I trying to say? I'm saying you've made a brilliant choice, and I didn't even think of that, and I wish I had, because it is one of my favorite sounds. So what Steph is saying, the rumble of an elephant, and it is the most calming and at the same time thrilling sound. When you realize that they're communicating, they're talking to each other, they do these low, deep bass rumbles. And you can feel it vibrating through your chest, and you can watch them responding to each other. The thing I've loved about the Mara, actually, in these vast open plains, there's a very pregnant Tommy, by the way, behind the birds. Look at her belly. Hey, girl, you are going to pop any day now. Things I've loved about the Mara, in contrast to Djuma, not to compare them, but just a contrasting thing, was being able to watch elephant herds scattered kilometers away from each other, and you can actually look down on them and watch them communicate and see how one herd responds to the rumblings of another herd that could easily be up to a kilometer away. That's special. Sherry says the sound of thunder. We had the most spectacular storm last night. Although I have to confess, I did actually at one point get a little bit of a fright. It sounded like the storm was over, and all of a sudden there was one of those random lightning strikes with a boom of thunder straight away. Photobombing Hummerkop that just came overhead. But the thunder last night was loud, and lots of rain. It was beautiful. An African thunderstorm, complete with the smells and the sound effects, is an experience. That's a very good answer. Hey, we're going to have to leave Adrian to think. He's still thinking back there. Brain's working furiously. I can see steam coming out of his ears. Let's jump across to Rolf and join him and Jandre to find out what their favorite sounds are.
Well, speaking of jumping, Jamie, and we've got some jumping lions in the trees here, and both of these are trying their best not to fall out of the tree, and also to find a bit of more of a comfortable position, but it's all getting rather edgy, and at any minute one of them could slip and fall out. And for now they're doing a good job of hanging in there. And one of my favourite sounds of the bush is the Peter's epauletted fruit bat, who sounds a little bit like a techno DJ, and that a very nice call in the night, but only in rather tropical areas. You can hear them around the Djuma camp as well. There needs to be lovely fruit trees in the area, and they've got a very high-pitched, obviously with the echo-sounding call, and if you have a chance, you can try and find that sound online, and you'll see what I mean when I say the techno bat. The way they call is very repetitive, but got a pretty good techno beat to it. One of my favorite night sounds. Obviously, another very nice night sound is all the nightjars. Always nice to hear them calling as well as the owls, etc. But the animal that we're looking at right now is one of those very iconic sounds of Africa. And if you've been near to a group of or pride of lions roaring in unison in the dead of night, it is really a sound to behold, and you can feel it in your chest, and they always sound a lot closer than they are because of that real booming sound that they make. So as much as we get blasé about it, it's still one of my favorite calls of the bush. It just really reminds you of Africa. And what's Andre's favourite sound there, buddy?
Least favourite is James snoring.
Least favourite being James's snoring. Okay.
Fiery neck nightjar.
Fiery neck nightjar. Nice sound that, yep.
Grey hornbill by day.
Grey hornbill by day. That's a good mix. I like the fiery neck nightjar. I haven't heard James's snoring, however. I was in a room next to him, but maybe I was just tired most nights. Yeah, well, lots of guys do, and some girls as well. We were actually hearing some of these girl lions snoring a minute ago, and so it's not past the girls to compete with the snoring. I've actually heard some rhinoceros probably being the best snorers. A lot of the comments coming in saying that they like the hippo's grunt. I wonder, is that the grunt or their call? Because I often say that hippos are probably the best joke tellers in the bush, because they go underwater, they tell each other jokes, and they come up laughing. Yeah, anyway, these lions still practicing their tree climbing skills, and I'm sure if there's a leopard watching, he's probably thinking, amateurs. But Laura Moore, thanks for your comment saying the little chirp of the cheetah. That's a very nice sound, and it's quite easily be anybody's favourite, I'd say. Those little real bird-like sounds, and little chirps or I don't know how you really describe it, the squeal or the chirp of a cheetah. Dale, you want to know what noises rhinos make? Dale, you will be very surprised as to the sound the massive frame of a white rhino will make. It's almost like I would say a dolphin or a whale in the ocean is the only animals that I would say compared to that sound, that squeaky noise that rhinos make. And with that massive frame, it's almost embarrassing, the sound that both black and white rhino make. Now, speaking of high-pitched noises and squeals, let's go over to Jamie, who might have some trumpeting noisemakers.
You know what just happened, and it's just one of those things, inevitable. We've just had this entire herd walk out around us. It was a complete accident. I actually stopped to look at something else, and I parked on a game path coming out of the bushes. And all of it, look at the little one. Look at it run. Oh, full of the joys of spring today. Oh, look at this trio of trouble here. Ranging in ages from about, I would say, a couple of maybe just over 6 months to around about 3 years or so. And then the biggest one, I think, would probably be around about 5 or so. A really lovely herd of elephants. But what just happened was they walked past us and did that low rumble that we were talking about, that spectacular sound. Oh, so playful. That little female is just wants to play with everybody. You've got to give her credit. Run. Little legs keeping up. Playing with the big kids. I want to lead. I want to be in front. Oh, it's too stunning. This little group together. Now, Harry, you want to know why elephants have so many wrinkles, and the answer is it increases their surface area. Now, an elephant is a massive animal, just in case, that needed reinforcing. They are very large animals, and therefore they have a large volume. Forgive me, I'm not being patronizing, I'm just trying to explain it clearly, especially because we do get kids watching. So an elephant is big. Now, the more skin it has, the easier it is for it to cool down. Most of that cooling down, of course, is done through the system of the ears. So the blood flow of the capillaries in the ears that then they sort of waft or wave their ears, and it cools the blood down, and then that passes through to the elephant. But some of that heat is lost through that increase in surface area, through the skin itself. Are you being cheeky? You're going to get into trouble. Come on. You're going to be shepherded by the larger females. And the other advantage of having wrinkles, whether or not it is actually why elephants have wrinkles, but another advantage is that when elephants cool themselves down in mud, or they throw water over themselves, obviously the moisture gets trapped in between the folds of the skin, in the wrinkles themselves. And that means that the cooling effect is heightened and advanced. Okay, quickly, off you go to Ralph. I'll explain more in a bit.
Everybody, we're just witnessing the one dismount. There might be a second one coming up, because they've both been sitting in the sun a little bit. I think he feels quite embarrassed. Not the best dismount I've ever seen. You can see there with the flick of the tail. It's also a little bit of frustration there. Now going for a drink. Wonderful. The other ones might go down a little bit. lovely to see lions drinking. I always love that kind of reflection, and always nice around the water. It's always beautiful colours and with the ripples coming off the water. Always nice to watch any of the predators drinking, whether it be lion, leopard, cheetah, hyena. Oh, a little bit of action now kicking off. Maybe a bit of fun gonna start. It's getting later on in the day. Maybe our patience will be rewarded. Now, Squawk, are you wondering if the Mara lion population is stable? Absolutely. I think I've said it a couple of times in the last few days that's one of the things that really surprised me about the Mara, but I didn't know about it. It was just once I've witnessed the amount of lions within such a small area is incredible. I've never seen such a big concentration of lions anywhere else. So I think, and that's one of the things that the Mara is known for. And so there are a lot of lions here, and predators in general as well, because there's a lot of resource, especially with the migrating zebra and wildebeest, as well as the rest of the antelope and different animals as well. So there's very good food for all the herbivores, which then translates into big numbers and lots of food for predators. And so the territories can be a little bit smaller than you might find in other game reserves or parts of Africa where the resources are not quite as at the levels they are here. And because now even people talking about that the resources have really shrunk because all the zebra and wildebeest have migrated away from this area. But there are still a lot of animals here, and it's teeming with life. But, I think it's just so easy for the lions at the time of the migration, and they can literally pick animals off at will, that it does become a little bit more difficult for them now, with there being, yes, less resources, but there are still a lot of resources around. It's just that they need to work for it. Now, let's see the dismount here. Everybody, let's see. Let's give him a rating out of 10. Well, it looks more like a female. That wasn't too bad. I think that just the last little dismount at the end deserves maybe a -3, so I'll give her a 7. And that's my call on it. She was better than the one before. She's probably done it a few more times. But, there's definitely just an element of falling out of the tree in the end. Try and keep it straight, and then just launch. Not quite as good as that of a leopard. So, as we still sit here in this wonderful scene, I might stay here a little bit longer, everybody. Sorry, but I couldn't resist staying with this pride of lions. But in the meantime, let's head you on over to Jamie with one of those animals with the lovely eyelashes.
They're lovely eyelashes indeed. And in fact, I do remember when we spoke about people's favorite aspect of a giraffe, and forgive me, I can't remember who it was that said it, but one of our lovely viewers said that her favorite aspect of giraffe, favorite one thing, singular thing about giraffe was their eyelashes. Eyelashes, of course, that are very functional in order to protect the eyes of the giraffe, especially when they are moving into thorny bushes or even bushes without thorns, still come with little branches and twigs that could do serious damage to a giraffe's eye. Now, I would have been very impressed if any of you had actually said that your favorite sound of the bush was a giraffe. They are pretty much largely silent creatures, although recent research has discovered that they do produce rumbles or a hum that is too low for us as human beings to hear. Hence why I would have been very impressed if you'd said it was your favorite sound. So a silent creature, apart from occasionally, actually, if they're feeding around a camp at night, the way that they feed and they move through the vegetation almost sounds a little bit like the feeding of an elephant herd. I have made that mistake before. Assumed that I was walked around what I assumed was the herd of elephants, and it turned out to be a journey of giraffe instead. All part of the joy of discovery. answer says that they really like the giraffe's tongue. That was... Oh, goodness, I'm so sorry. I've got a memory like a sieve at the moment. Just too many things to think about. I cannot remember who said that, but one of the viewers actually mentioned that as well when whoever joined us that particular day also mentioned the giraffe's tongue. And then, was it Aaron who said that he really enjoyed the giraffe's stance while they're drinking? Pretty sure that came up. Well, there we go. This particular giraffe isn't drinking, nor is she grazing. She's actually reaching down to small, tiny shrubs that have only just started to grow. There we go. She's actually picking through there. And she's leaning forward as if she were drinking. But that splay-legged stance of a giraffe when they have to put their heads down is entertaining. It's entertaining to witness. I can't imagine that it's very comfortable, but they don't seem to mind it too much. The one thing you will notice, of course, is that they don't keep their heads down for too long. They will always bring them up once again, and that's because the whole design of a giraffe is geared towards maintaining a correct level of blood pressure in order to be able to get blood up to the top of the head against gravity, sometimes up to, well, I mean, let's say that's tallest a record-breaking giraffe would be around about 6 meters in height. But either way, you can imagine the heart has to work hard. Did anyone else see something move behind that termite mound? Did I imagine that? Maybe I did. Might have been a bird as well. But yes, so they don't actually keep their heads down for too long because that requires a contraction of the muscles of the neck. Now, most people imagine, and for good reason, because it's what you would expect, that giraffe actually have very strong muscles running down the backs of their necks, and that's how they keep their heads up. They don't. They have a very, very strong tendon. So there's no muscular contractions involved with keeping the head up. Oh, that is obviously a really, truly delicious tree, given the amount of saliva that just went streaming from her mouth. She actually has to contract the muscles in her neck to bring her head down like that. There's the tongue, talking about people's favorite aspect of a giraffe. A long, very nimble. Oh, that giraffe wanted to be in the shot as well. So does that one. Enormously long and deep purple in color. Male following behind a young female. Sorry, if we can stay on the two that were moving there. Adrian, thanks so much. You've got a really nice contrast in size between what is actually not a very big male and a young female. Hey, buddy. Come on. She is barely old enough. He really is not. She is not quite fully grown yet. Tisk. Tisk, tisk. Now what he might do is phlegm and grimace here. So he's testing her urine, or at least her scent. Now she's going to urinate, and that is a direct instinctive response to his attentions. Now what he's doing is he's phlegm and grimacing. And although we all know the biological reasons behind it, I confess I do find it hysterical when giraffe phlegm and grimace. It's still not as good as a white rhinoceros phlegm and grimacing. So that movement, that curling of the upper lip is the phlegm and grimace. And it's in response to the male wanting to test the scent of that female. He wants to see if she's an estrus. But look how tiny she is compared to the adult female that's in front of the male now. She really is nowhere near at that point. She is far too young, but she's probably getting to the stage where she might experience a sort of her first estrus cycle, or come into heat for the first time. And for young females, that they aren't fertile yet. As far as I know, it works the same way with giraffe. They're not necessarily fertile during their first few heat cycles or estrus cycles. Now he's moved on. At least he's gone for an adult female this time around. He might have better luck there. He certainly gets 10 out of 10 for persistence. Hey, mister. Still quite young. There's an interesting question coming through from Brent. Now, Brent wants to know if giraffe ever get injured while they're mating. It's a good question. I suspect, because, in the vast history and the massive size of Africa, I have a suspicion that probably has happened in the past. A lot of the time, the male goes in to mount the female, and she actually just moves away from him. And it's an instinctive response on her part to reject him constantly until she's quite certain that he is her best option to mate with. So that's why the males start courting the female before she is ready to mate, and then it gives the opportunity for the biggest, strongest male to compete for the right to mate with her. As for whether they've ever injured themselves, I guess they must have. They're extraordinarily coordinated despite the look of things. They do occasionally twist ankles or possibly even break legs when they're running away, so I guess it's possible that the male might buckle or fall. Whether or not he'd injure the female, no. There is not as massive a size difference between an adult male and an adult female that he would cause her any injury, but it is quite a short process to avoid putting too much pressure on the female's back and hips. The same is even more clearly seen in elephants when they mate. Now, you've seen the comparison in size between a big bull elephant. Now, a female, when she's ready to mate at her earliest, she could be very young, quite small still. And a massive bull elephant mating with a young female like that could cause damage. I mean, he could easily be double, possibly even triple the weight of the female that he's mating with. And that is why elephant mating is a very, very brief affair, if I could term it that. A very quick process. Lovely. Giraffe, of course, have the protection of those lovely long eyelashes, but apparently Rolf's lions are experiencing a problem with flies in their eyes.
Flies in their eyes, indeed. Thanks, Jamie. Yeah, it's I don't know how they allow them to carry on. I suppose eventually they get used to it, but that would really drive me nuts. But it's a daily occurrence, and you see it on them quite regularly. So probably eventually you do get used to it. And there's a lovely tick. That's a nice fat one. That one's nearly ready to drop off, I think, as they do, and they complete their life cycle. And that would be the end of the gorging on blood. So that's another sanguinivore, a tick feeding on the blood of a lion, and then you could have an oxpecker coming down. I've seen oxpeckers on lions, but they don't really tolerate them that much. They shake their head too much, and it's and eventually fly off, because I think if they could, the lions would actually kill them and eat them, especially the youngsters. So I wouldn't be landing on a lion if I was an oxpecker, but well, then he's got to deal with his own ticks, as this one is. But eventually the ticks they just drop off as they have enough blood. And that's normally the second or third phase, that very grey-blue tick that is on there. There's actually many different species of ticks, and different ticks will carry different diseases and also have different amounts of life phases. You get two-stage life cycle and three-stage life cycles, difference with ticks. And I'm sure they get fleas as well, and maybe even a little bit of mites. It all depends on the weather and the surrounding environment as to what exact parasites they get. But it's totally normal for all of the animals to have ticks and fleas on them. It just depends on their condition at the time as to how much it affects them, actually. And lions do a little bit of allo grooming, so sometimes they can get ticks off, but it's not, they do that kind of kneading with their paws, and also with their teeth they can try and get it out, but they generally aren't that great with parasite removal. So it's more down to actual cleaning of the hair and running their tongue over it and keeping themselves nice and clean, but they don't generally do very well in ridding themselves of parasites. So they actually just have them through their life cycle, and when they drop off, that's that. And so they can be affected quite heavily if their immune system drops as a result of them. It can even happen with those young males when they leave the pride and they don't eat enough, and they're sort of running between meals, and then parasites can start to, for instance, in that kind of case, then affect them quite badly. But as long as they're eating well and they're keeping their immune system up, it generally doesn't bother them too much. So, everybody, we are going to be joined by some of the school groups in a little while, and for that, let's head you on over to Jamie, who is going to say hello to all of them.
Hello, and a very special warm welcome to the new viewers joining us, as well as a very special welcome to Shelton Park Elementary, Thorogood and Holland Elementary. The kids have joined us from 3 different schools this afternoon, and I'll chat a little bit to the kids in a moment, but for the new viewers that have just joined us, a very warm welcome. We're about to take you on a live safari throughout not only the Masai Mara in Kenya, but throughout the greater Kruger area in South Africa. My name is Jamie. This afternoon, Adrian is on camera with me, and you can send through your questions below. Now, the kids joining us this afternoon, well, for us it's the afternoon, for them it is, or for you guys it's the morning, are 6 to 7 years old. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to imagine that you're on the back of this safari vehicle with us. So imagine that you're here in Africa, experiencing these amazing things, and then you can ask questions that you'd like to know, because what you're seeing is happening right now in real life here in Africa, and we're in Kenya. Now, we are starting off our afternoon, and it promises to be a very exciting afternoon. Let me duck down with one of the strangest animals of the Masai Mara or Kenya. This is a group or a journey of giraffe. Now, giraffe, of course, is the tallest land mammal, so they really are absolutely enormous. They can grow up to 6 meters. I'll give you an idea, that would be around about just over 18 feet in record-breaking situations. So to give you an idea, and those of you that when you go up to the first floor, you'd probably be just about level with a giraffe's head, depending on how tall the building is. You might be able to look down a little bit. If you looked out of the window of the first floor, you'd be looking down at the top of a giraffe's head, but only just. So a giraffe is an absolutely enormous animal. Now, this is a group of female giraffe, and you can see they're accompanied by a group of birds sitting on the back of that female. Now, in answer to Cyril's question, you want to know if there's lots and lots of animals in the Mara. There are loads of animals out here. Now, the Mara here in Kenya is actually the home of one of nature's greatest spectacles, one of nature's biggest migrations. And although they're not here at the moment, there are times of the year where there are, listen to this, nearly 2 million animals that come and participate in the migration, and over 1 million of those are wildebeest. But even when the wildebeest aren't here, we've got giraffe, we've got elephants, lions, leopards, cheetah, warthogs, different types of antelope, which is basically the African equivalent of deer. So many different types of animals, and what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try and show you as many different types of animals as I can. Of course, I think most people, when they think of the wilderness of Africa, they get so excited about seeing a lion. Well, it's time for you kids to get excited as well, because Rolf would like to show some to you.
hello kiddies, and hello to everybody that's still watching. Look at this amazing scene that we have here. We've got a very big family of lions. There's about 15 of them, and there's lots of little youngsters as well. So there's big lions and small lions, and it's wonderful to see such a big group of lions, isn't it? And there's one or two just lying on the road here near to us. One or two of them were also climbing up the tree, and so it's been very nice sitting next to these lions. Danny, thank you very much for your question, Danny. You want to know how close can we get to the lions? Now, I'm just ducking underneath there because that lion's just in front of us, and I don't know if that can show you how close we can get to them. Sometimes they can walk right next to the car, and as long as we don't start the car and make a noise or surprise them, they're quite happy being very close to us. And look at this one. He just seems to be watching his mom walk behind us, but very happy, not a problem at all with us being so close in the car. Ilana, you're asking a question. Why don't the lions get mad when they've got the flies on their eyes? I know, I would also get mad, wouldn't you, Ilana? And I'm sure the rest of you kiddies, you wouldn't like that, would you? Having those flies all around your eyes. Wow, it must be very irritating. And I think it's just that they get used to it because there's not much they can do about it. So if they had to be getting mad all the time, I think they'd get rather tired of getting mad. So maybe they just say, oh well, okay, if I don't want to be mad all the time and I can't get rid of the flies, so I might as well just be happy that the flies are around, or just ignore them. Jayla, you want to know how the animals stand the heat? Jayla, at the moment, it's not particularly hot. And when I say particularly, I mean it's not really that hot at the moment. It's not very hot, and there's a nice breeze blowing. So you can see the lions all lying in the shade, but it's not too hot, and this lion is walking right next to us as I'm talking. He's watching us, and there's the pole at the back of the car, so you can see how close they are to us, hey? That is absolutely amazing, so close, but we've got lots more lions here, and maybe we'll see one of them coming down for a drink, or maybe one of them will climb back up the tree. It's always nice to be so close to them in the open like this. Danny Lynn, you want to know how long do lions sleep for? Well, Danny Lynn, sometimes it might be better to say how long are they awake, because lions can sleep for a very long time. And if you think that if you go to bed at 8 o'clock at night and you wake up at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock in the morning, well, lions, they can go to bed at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and wake up the next day at lunchtime. So they can sleep for almost the entire night and the whole day the next day. They can sleep for very long. I think they're the best sleepers of all the animals in the wild. Look at that. They look so comfortable, and they really sleep very well. I don't think there's many animals that can sleep as well as a lion. And this one looks like he's having a little bit of a nightmare, or maybe he's chasing an impala in his sleep. And so, everybody, this is so exciting with us seeing lions. And you know what? The excitement doesn't stop. Let's head you on over to Jamie, who's got another very big animal to show you.
A very big animal indeed. Just fascinating, so interesting to watch. Watch the way that this young male is feeding, the way that it's using its trunk to pull up the pieces of grass and then put them in its mouth. Now, if an elephant didn't have a trunk, you can imagine how difficult it would be for an elephant to eat. It would have to get down onto its elbows and bring its face right down to the ground. And instead, it's got this amazing trunk that can go up and down and sideways. In fact, an elephant can move its trunk even more than you can move your arms. So your arms, you can straighten your arms. Maybe you're a little bit double jointed and you can really almost straighten it the other way so that your elbow bends the wrong way. Please don't try that. But you still can't go all the way round. An elephant's trunk has no bones in it. It's just muscle. So it can stretch all the way out. If you stretch your arm right to the fingertips, it can stretch right out, and then it can contract in. It can twist, it can turn, it can go up, it can go down. It can curl up on itself. It's an amazing thing. What a lovely question from Ilana and Faith. While we watch these beautiful, peaceful animals, and very, very intelligent animals, actually, Ilana and Faith would like to know, how did we get here, and how did we find these animals? So we are really lucky. We actually get to live with these animals. We live in a camp on the top of the hills behind the elephants. We live there, and we get to travel every single day down into a reserve, so where these animals are protected and they can live wild and free, and we actually get to come and visit them every day. So what we do basically when we go on a safari, and if you ever get to go on a safari, or perhaps you've been on a safari, you basically drive around until you find something. And that's the best part, is because you just never know what you're going to find. It's always a surprise, and every day is totally different. You're almost guaranteed to find some elephants, but you don't know when you're going to find them, you don't know where you're going to find them, you don't know what they're going to be doing, because they are completely wild. And the reason vehicles, so cars, driving around them, bringing tourists to come and see them. So although they are completely wild, they're very, very relaxed around the vehicles, because they've learned that the cars that drive around, like the one you can see at the back, they aren't dangerous to them. They're not going to in any way be hurt by the people in the cars. So it's a matter of them being comfortable with us. So that is how I found them. Honestly, I was just driving around. Although, I have to confess, it's pretty easy to find an elephant out here because they're so big and there's not that many trees to hide them. Now this is a group of boys, so it's male elephants. And that's the way that they live together. So the males actually don't live with the rest of the herd when they get to the elephant equivalent of adulthood. Then the males move out and they go and they form their own bachelor groups, like a group of students living together. Now, Mary, you want to know what an elephant uses its tusks for, apart from feeding. So an elephant's tusk is a really useful thing. It's a type of tooth. So it's a tooth that is very deeply attached, and they can use their tusks for defending themselves, perhaps chasing after a predator, fighting with other males. So male elephants do fight for the opportunity to mate with a female. So they use it to fight each other. They use it to display how strong they are. They often push trees over. And what they can do is they use those tusks in a lot of different ways when they're feeding. One is to rub up against the bark of a tree to strip away the bark. Sometimes they use it to dig in the ground. Sometimes they use it to help them break the grass. So they twist their trunk around a long piece of grass, they wrap it around it, and then they use their tusks to actually pull the grass or break the grass. And that's why their tusks get sort of worn away in places, and sometimes they crack a little, sometimes they break, sometimes they're missing a tusk entirely. But elephants use their tusks for lots and lots of different reasons. Most of those reasons, though, are for feeding. Lovely question, Hannah. Well done. So Hannah's been looking closely, which is what we'd love to do out here because there's so many little details. Now Hannah wants to know, why are their ears so big? And the answer is because it gets really hot out here. Sometimes, especially when you get to travel to South Africa, for example, at the moment, and you will a little bit later, it can sometimes get over 40 degrees. So it can often be over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, an elephant is really big, so it's kind of like wandering around with a lot of jerseys on, a lot of jumpers on. They get really, really hot. So the big ears are the elephant's way of cooling down. Now, if you look closely behind the ear, if you try and have a look, you should be able to see that they've got lots of veins. You know, if you look on the back of your hand or possibly on your wrist, you can see all the networks of blood vessels where the blood flows through. Elephants have lots and lots and lots of blood vessels in their ears. So the blood flows into the ears, they flap their ears, and it cools them down. Because it cools the blood down, the blood gets cool, and it then travels to the rest of the body and cools the whole elephant down. So a big ear like that is kind of like an elephant's internal air conditioning unit. Helps to keep them cool. There you go, you can see all the folds, and the skin's quite thin there as well. Lovely question, McKenna. While we watch, because I've said that elephants are always busy doing something. Now, McKenna's wondering, how do they sleep? Now, he's having a little bit of a scratch there, rubbing his ankle. Now, McKenna, you want to know how they sleep. Elephants don't sleep very much. So adult elephants will actually only sleep for a couple of minutes, sometimes every 3 days. But the young elephants will often sleep throughout the day. So they'll wander around and they'll lie down and they'll take a nap for an hour, and then they will carry on with their day. And elephants, despite what you think, elephants can lie down. They can sleep lying down. A lot of the time, though, the adults don't. So a lot of the time they either lean on a tree or a termite mound, or possibly even just doze while they're standing. So elephants can sleep in a lot of different ways. I'm just saying hello to some of the other people who are coming past. There's also tourists coming to see these animals. So we've spoken about elephants sleeping. They don't do very much sleeping at all. So why don't you go back to Ralph so he can tell you how different a lion is?
They are very different, yes, Jamie, because lions can sleep for most of the day and most of the night. And look at these ones, they're sleeping very, very comfortably here, and especially on the back. And they all look very comfortable. Lots of ears flicking because there's lots of flies that are coming down and irritating them. So that's why you see their ears flicking like that. Michael, you want to know if the lions roar, if they get mad. Well, Michael, they don't particularly roar if they get mad. They will do a lot of growling if they get mad. But when they roar, it's so that they're telling all the other lions that this is their place. And that's what we call a territory. With lions, they protect an area that they stay in, and that is why they roar. They say that this is our place. No other lions come here. If you do, you're looking for trouble. And so when they're mad, it's mostly a very loud growl. Like if you've ever heard a dog growling, well, make that a lot louder and you'll know what a lion sounds like. So it can be quite loud, and you don't want to be growled at by a lion. It's quite scary. But there won't be too much growling going on with these lions anytime soon, I don't think, because everybody looks very happy. And so there was only one that went and laid down on top of the other one, and there was a small little growl, but I think it was more that he was a little bit irritated with his friend for coming and lying on top of him while he was fast asleep. And there you can see the nice black on the back of their ears. That's how they follow each other through the long grass, because it's very difficult to see each other because they're almost exactly the same color as the grass. But they've got these nice black colors on the back of their ears, and that's at least something that they can easily see through the long grass. And if you are the color of a lion, and you'll see the grass there, looking very much like that. Now, Natalie, you want to know if lions hunt elephants? Natalie, they can, but it's quite a big animal for them to hunt, and it's quite dangerous for them because the elephant's also very strong and he's very big, so there needs to be lots of lions before they'll be able to hunt elephants. And this group of lions, there's lots of young or small or baby lions, so it will be quite difficult for them to hunt elephants. So what these lions mainly hunt is smaller stuff like zebra and maybe some topi and smaller animals like that. Now, speaking of smaller animals, it seems Jamie has got a smaller predator, which a lion is, to show you.
I do really want to show you, because remember I said that there are so many different types of animals here in Africa. Well, this is one I bet some of you didn't even imagine might exist out here. So this particular animal is called a jackal, and this one is a black-backed jackal. So it belongs to the dog family, and it's kind of like the African equivalent of a fox or a coyote, a little bit smaller than a coyote. And it essentially is a very, very clever little animal. So it wanders about, it can eat fruit, it can eat seeds, but it mainly scavenges. And if you ever watch jackal, they are so brave. You saw those lions with Ralph. Now, when lions catch themselves some food, obviously they hunt different animals and they catch them and they eat them. You'll often find that there is a jackal wandering about on the outskirts, just far enough away from the lions that they can't catch it. And a jackal will wait until the lions are really full, like those lions with Ralph, and they're feeling really sleepy. And then when they go and lie in the shade to have a nap, then the jackal sneaks forward and tries to grab bits of their dinner. So a jackal is a very clever little animal and a very brave animal, because if a lion catches a jackal, it could actually kill it. Oh, don't go hiding behind the bush there. You can just see it wandering about behind. That's okay. It's going to pop out soon. The other very special thing about jackals, here we go, out it comes, is the fact that they live together in family groups. Now, a lot of mammals out here don't really, they don't stay together. So the male and the female don't, oh, look, it's pouncing, it's hunting. Maybe trying to catch an insect, possibly a mouse there. It's got something, you can see it's chewing. I think that was an insect. So I said that they do scavenge, in other words, take food from other predators, but they can also hunt for themselves. Now, this particular animal I mentioned was in the dog family. Now, Michael, you want to know if a jackal is related to a hyena. And the answer is no, not really. Now, although everybody sort of, oh, there's an elephant, look at that, really get an idea of just how small the jackal is and how big the elephant is at the back. Now, a hyena, even though it kind of looks like a dog, actually, oh, you missed it, actually doesn't belong to the dog family, and it doesn't belong to the cat family either. So although it is a carnivore, so therefore sort of related to dogs and cats, it actually has its very own family called the hyena family, the Hyaenidae family. And if you go back far enough, they're probably more closely related to cats than dogs, but they are not cats and they are not dogs, whereas a jackal is a true member of the dog family, like a wolf or a painted dog or a painted wolf or wild dog or a fox. Now, Taylor and Lal, you want to know how fast a jackal can run. Now, it has to be able to run pretty fast to get away from angry lions when it's stolen their food. Now, I don't know if perhaps you have dogs or perhaps you have a friend who has a dog. Now, if you can imagine a jackal as sort of being a little bit bigger than a Jack Russell, you know how fast dogs can run. They can run really, really fast, faster than any of us can run. And a jackal is very similar. So they are super, super fast, probably at the fastest, I would say, around about 30 miles per hour, maybe even a little bit faster. But just imagine how fast your dogs can run, or your friends' dogs, or perhaps dogs that you've seen at the park, and you've seen how fast they can run. So you can imagine that a jackal runs at a pretty similar speed. So they use a combination of being small and sneaky and very, very clever to be able to outwit some of the bigger predators out here. And you can see what it's doing at the moment is it's stalking through the grass. Now, Tyan, you want to know how they attack their prey. So what a jackal does is it's just what this one's doing, is it moves through an area and it waits until it disturbs something, so maybe a flying insect. Then, as you saw, it jumps forward, tries to land on the insect with its paws, and immediately grabs it in its sharp teeth. It's got lots and lots of teeth, and they're very, very sharp. And then it immediately crunches down. When it's hunting something like a mouse, it might have to be a bit more stealthy. So you see those huge ears on the top of the jackal's head? Obviously, they use those to listen very carefully. Oh, where'd it go? Oh, there it is. There it is. It's just rolling about. Maybe there's something nice and smelly there it wants to roll in. Yeah, you can just see its head popping up. It'll listen really carefully for the rustle of a rodent, and then it will lie still and wait for the mouse or the gerbil to walk close to it. And then it'll spring up into the air and land on it with its front paws, and then grab it quickly and shake it about. And then it will eat it up. So that's the way that the jackals hunt. Ah, Senna! Oh, look! Look at that! I'm sorry, Senna, I promise I'll answer your question, but this is so wonderful. Remember I said we just find so many different animals. This is so cute. Look, they've even got babies with them. This is a type of animal called a banded mongoose, and they've got tiny, tiny little ones. You can just see them crawling about. This is probably one of their first trips outside of their den site, where they hide underground. So this is a group of banded mongoose, and we're talking about families and how many can live in a group. Now, with the jackal, to answer Senna's question, jackals live in pairs, and sometimes their grown-up children, or their grown-up babies, will actually stay and help the parents with the next puppies that are born. Now, banded mongoose are slightly different. Banded mongoose live together in these big groups, sometimes up to maybe even 20 individuals. And the whole group will help to raise these tiny babies. This is so cool, guys. These are the first baby banded mongoose I've seen in the Mara. That is so fantastic. Oh, too cute. They're one of my favorite animals. They're also one of the most interesting. Look. Following along, so curious. Looking to see if they can get a drink. Ah, look, they've just started to get their bands, their little stripes on their backs. Oh man, this is so cool. Hey, little ones. This is very special, kids. Really, really special. You don't get to see these little guys because they usually hide underground. And a lovely question from Alana. While we're watching them, they are one of my favorite animals to watch. And the reason is because they are so affectionate and busy and playful. Now, Alana's wondering how they play. What they do is, especially the little ones, pretend to be adults. So it's kind of like playing that they're all grown up. Look at this little one. So one of the things that banded mongoose do is they mark their territory, and then the little babies will come along and they will imitate the adults. So they're basically playing copycat. They'll also wrestle with each other like puppies or kittens will do. Ah, wow. I think that's their mum there, because it looks like they're all having a chance to suckle. And only one mongoose in this group will be able to have babies. Sometimes one or two others might have babies, but mostly it's basically the head female, the alpha female, the leader of the group. Oh, stunning. Their tiny tails. Now, to give you an idea of how big they are, the banded mongoose is probably, I think if you stretch out your arm and measure from your armpit to the inside part of your wrist, that's about as long as a banded mongoose is. And those babies would fit into my hand. I would be able to pick up a baby like that in one hand. Now, we have a very good question about why the mongoose have a dirt pile. Why are they sitting on top of a dirt pile? Now, the answer to that, Aidan, is because it's not a dirt, well, it is a dirt pile, but it's a very specific dirt pile that's been built by insects called termites. Now, I'm sure you've heard of termites. You would have encountered them, I'm sure, in your life. Now, termites here build these big mounds out of compacted dirt, and they do that because it's basically like the chimney for their underground homes. Now, banded mongoose will go and move into termite mounds because there's lots of nice holes and tunnels, because as I said, it's like a chimney for the termites. So there's lots of holes and tunnels. So a banded mongoose, because it's so tiny, will actually climb into a termite mound to hide away. This is fantastic. You've got to experience some of the best parts of Kenya. Now we're going to send you in the blink of an eye all the way across to a country in the southern part of Africa to join James.